My own daughter forbade me from attending her wedding and even hired security to keep me out. In response, I canceled the reception venue and stopped all financial support. Months later, her husband visited me, and what he revealed about her left me shocked. I never thought something like this could happen to me, but here we are. My daughter, Layla, is 28 years old, and she uninvited me from her own wedding. Let that sink in for a moment. I was forbidden to attend a wedding I was literally paying for. I'm still trying to process it all, but I thought sharing this here might help me make sense of it, or at least vent a little. First, let me just say this. Layla has always been a bit difficult, even as a child. We've had our ups and downs, but what parent and child don't, right? Still, I never imagined things would escalate to this level. Yes, we've had disagreements in the past, but nothing that made me believe we'd get to this. Anyway, I'll try to be as clear as possible. Layla has been with her fiancé, Arthur, for a few years. It's not like they have a lot of money, so when they started planning the wedding, I offered to cover the expenses. It seemed like a kind gesture, and honestly, I wanted to help them start their marriage off on the right foot. I know weddings are incredibly expensive, and since they were struggling financially, I thought, why not? It was my way of showing support. I was happy to do it, and I thought she'd appreciate it. It's a big moment, right? Your daughter's wedding, the day your daughter steps into a new phase of her life. I wasn't expecting a party in my honor or anything, but a little gratitude would have been nice. Things started to go sideways not long after that. I remember a conversation with Layla when I was just trying to be helpful. Hey, Layla, I was thinking about the seating arrangements. Do you want me to see if I can rent extra chairs, or do you have that covered already? She barely looked up from her phone, kind of distracted. It's fine, Dad. We have it handled, I think. I raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? I don't mind helping. I can cover the cost of a few extra things if you need. I told you we have it, okay? She snapped, glancing up at me for the first time in a while. I was taken aback. Hey, I'm just trying to make sure you have what you need. It's no trouble. She huffed and rolled her eyes. Well, we don't need you micromanaging everything, okay? We're fine. It was little things like that started to add up. I wasn't asking for much, just trying to lend a hand. I couldn't understand why she was being so short with me when I was only trying to help. Fast forward a bit, and the wedding planning seemed to be going pretty smoothly. Layla appeared to have everything under control. I wasn't heavily involved in the small details. Honestly, I didn't want to intrude. I trusted her to handle it. But one day, I thought it would be nice to add my brother, Luis, to the guest list. He and Layla have always been close, so I figured it wouldn't be a problem. Just one more person, right? No big deal. I called the wedding planner to ask if they could add Luis, and that's when things got weird. The planner sounded a little uncomfortable when I asked. They hesitated, then told me the guest list was already full. Full? How is that possible? It's a wedding, not a movie theater. You can always make room for one more, right? I pressed a little, thinking maybe I'd misunderstood, that it was a mistake. Finally, after a bit of back and forth, the planner sent me the guest list. And let me tell you, when I opened that list, my heart stopped for a second. I wasn't on it. Neither was Liliana, my wife. At that point, I was beyond confused. I thought it had to be a mistake. How could my own daughter leave me off the guest list to her wedding, especially when I'm the one paying for it? It didn't make any sense. So I called the planner again, trying to stay calm, even though my mind was racing. I asked them point blank, why aren't we on the guest list? The planner hesitated again, then dropped the bomb. They told me Layla had given them specific instructions not to invite me or Liliana. And to make things worse, she requested extra security to make sure we couldn't get into the venue if we tried. I just sat there stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That my own daughter was planning her wedding behind my back, and that she'd even hired security to keep me out. I mean, what the hell? At that moment, I was furious. I asked the planner for proof because this had to be a misunderstanding, right? Maybe it was miscommunication or something. But no, they forwarded me the emails, and there it was, in black and white. Layla had been planning this for weeks, and it was very clear I wasn't welcome. I just didn't know what to do. I felt completely betrayed. This whole time, I thought I was doing something good for her, helping her, supporting her, and she was actively making sure I couldn't be at her wedding. I can't even explain how much that hurt. But what hit me the hardest wasn't just that she left me off the guest list. It was the fact that she planned it that way. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an oversight. She deliberately made sure I couldn't be there. And why? Because we've had a few arguments over the years? Because I didn't always agree with her choices? That's part of being a parent. You try to guide your kids, even when they don't want to listen. I couldn't stop thinking about all the times I supported her, when she had trouble in school, when she was hanging out with a bad crowd, when we were facing really difficult situations. I was always there, even when she was mad at the world. I tried to be the person she could rely on. And now she's shutting me out of one of the most important moments of her life, and I don't even know why. I don't want to play the victim, but it felt like a slap in the face. A cold, calculated slap. I've seen her go through phases where she was upset with me for small things, but she always came around eventually. This felt different. This felt permanent. After hanging up with the planner, I just stared at that email. I must have read it 100 times, hoping to see something that would make sense of it all, but nothing did. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. But mixed in with that anger was this deep sadness. It's hard to describe, but there's this feeling that washes over you when you realize your own child doesn't want you in their life. I kept asking myself, what did I do to deserve this? What could have possibly driven her this far? Sure, we've had our differences, but I never thought it would come to this. Blocking me from her wedding, making sure I couldn't even show up if I wanted to. It's like she was punishing me, but why? I wish I could say this part of the story has some grand conclusion, but it doesn't. That's how it left me, stunned, confused, and heartbroken. I didn't know what my next step would be, but one thing was clear, it wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was something much deeper, and I had no idea how to fix it. Well, after receiving that guest list and not seeing my name anywhere, I was furious. I couldn't just sit on that information and do nothing. I mean, how am I supposed to act like everything's okay after finding out my own daughter blocked me from her wedding? I knew I had to confront Layla and find out what the hell was going on. There was no way I could just brush it off without getting some answers. So I tried calling her. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. It went on like that all day. I get it, she's busy with wedding preparations and all, but at that point, I was desperate for some clarity. I didn't know if I was more angry or hurt, but I needed to talk to her. I left her a voicemail asking her to call me back. Nothing. Just silence. That silence was driving me crazy. After a day or two with no response, I reached my limit. If she wasn't coming to me, I was going to her. So I got in my car and drove over to her apartment. She didn't live far from me, and honestly, I didn't even think about what I was going to say. I just knew I needed to talk to her face to face. I thought maybe she could explain it. Maybe we could talk it out. Or maybe I was being naive thinking she'd have some reasonable explanation for all this. When I got to her place, I was buzzing with adrenaline. My head was full of all the things I wanted to say, but at the same time, I didn't know what to expect. I knocked on the door, and after what felt like an eternity, Layla opened it. She looked at me like she wasn't surprised I was there, as if she'd been expecting this confrontation. That just pissed me off even more, but I tried to stay calm. No need to lose my temper right off the bat, right? We stood there for a moment, and then she just asked, "What do you want, Dad?" Like I was some stranger who showed up uninvited. I told her straight up, I want to know why my name isn't on the guest list. Why the hell did you block me from your wedding? She sighed, rolled her eyes, and said something like, "I knew you'd find out eventually." That just made me even angrier. I asked her again, trying to keep my voice level, but it was shaking at that point. "Why, Layla? Why would you do this?" And her response was, "I saved you the trouble of having to show up." She said it so casually, like this whole thing wasn't a big deal. I'm standing there about to explode, and she's acting like it's just another Wednesday afternoon. I'll send you pictures if I have time, she added with this indifferent shrug. That's when I lost it. I couldn't hold it in anymore. What the hell is wrong with you? I yelled. I was shaking, filled with this mix of rage and disappointment. After everything I'd done for her, this was how she treated me. I couldn't understand it. How can a daughter block her own father from her wedding and then act like it's no big deal? But it didn't end there. She still had more to say, and none of it was good. She started listing all the reasons why, according to her, I deserved to be off the list. She said I was never on her side, that I was always against her, that I flaunted Liliana, my wife, her stepmother, in her face. She even brought up things from years ago, things I thought we'd moved past. She talked about times when she needed me to defend her and I didn't, like when she had a falling out with her cousin or when she got into trouble at school. I'm not going to lie, there were times when I couldn't defend her. She wasn't always right, and I wasn't going to support her when she was clearly in the wrong. I tried to explain that to her, but she wouldn't listen. She was convinced that I'd been against her for years, that I'd abandoned her, and that this whole wedding thing was just her way of getting back at me. She even brought up things from when she was younger, like the time we had to deal with her getting caught with pills. Yeah, she had her rough patches, but I was there for her. I supported her through all of that, even when it was hard. I didn't turn my back on her when she needed help. I tried to guide her, get her the help she needed, and make sure she stayed on the right track. But apparently none of that mattered. In her mind, I'd failed her in all the ways that really counted. Listening to her unleash all that anger made me realize just how deep her resentment ran. It wasn't just about this wedding, it was years of built-up frustration that I didn't even know she was harboring. And the way she was just throwing it all on me now, like it was my fault she was so messed up, it was too much. At some point, I started crying. I didn't even plan it, it just happened. I asked her, practically begging, "What did I do that was so terrible, Layla? Why are you treating me like this?" I was deeply hoping she'd show some sign of remorse or empathy, that she'd soften, even just a little. But no, she remained cold. "You were never on my side," she said. "You always cared more about your new life with Liliana. You didn't care about me." That hit me like a punch to the gut. I tried to explain to her that I always cared, that I loved her more than anything, but she was convinced that I'd chosen my new family over her. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there in her doorway, trying to understand how we'd gotten to this point. She didn't want me at her wedding. Apparently, she didn't want me in her life either. And nothing I said was going to change that. It felt like we were speaking two completely different languages. Every time I tried to explain myself, she'd bring up something else, like she'd been keeping a list of all the ways I'd failed her over the years. Eventually, she told me I'd just bring negativity into her life and that I needed to leave. Said I wasn't welcome at her wedding or in her life, and if I couldn't accept that, then I should leave. So I left, completely defeated. I didn't know what else to do. My own daughter didn't want me at her wedding, and no matter how much I tried to understand why, it all boiled down to this resentment she'd been carrying for years. I was lost, hurt, and honestly, more confused than ever. After leaving Layla's apartment that day, I was a wreck. I didn't know what to do or where to go from there. The whole confrontation felt like it went nowhere, and everything she said kept replaying over and over in my head. I tried to maintain my composure, but I was completely taken aback by the level of anger she had toward me. I mean, I knew we weren't exactly close, but to learn that she thought so little of me, that hurt. A few days went by after that, and I still hadn't heard from her. I was trying to give her space, hoping that maybe she'd reconsider, or at least calm down enough to talk rationally. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. The wedding was fast approaching, and I didn't know if I should just sit back and pretend everything was okay. I couldn't do that. I was at home with my wife, Liliana, telling her everything that happened. Liliana has always been patient with Layla, way more than I have been, but even she was fed up at that point. She told me it was time to stop letting Layla walk all over me. She was right. I had spent so long trying to make Layla happy, trying to keep some semblance of peace between us, but it never seemed to be enough. It was like no matter what I did, I could never win. And that's when I made the decision that changed everything. I couldn't continue financing a wedding I wasn't invited to. Think about it. I was paying for this huge celebration, covering everything from the venue to the food, and I wasn't even allowed to attend. It seemed ridiculous. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized Layla didn't care. She didn't care that I was hurt. She didn't care about all the money I'd spent. She didn't care about anything except herself. So I picked up the phone and called the venue. I told them to cancel everything. I knew I wasn't going to get the deposits back, but at that point, I didn't care about the money anymore. It wasn't about that anymore. I just couldn't stand the thought of her going through with that wedding while I was being treated like I didn't exist. I had to draw a line, even if it hurt. The venue manager was shocked when I told him to cancel. I guess it's not every day that someone cancels a wedding like that, especially so close to the date. But I didn't hesitate. I told him to notify the caterers, the decorators, everyone. The wedding planner was being paid by her. I know some people will say I was being petty, that I should have just let her have her wedding and dealt with the consequences later. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about the wedding. It was about respect. I was her father, and she treated me like I didn't matter. I wasn't going to stand by and let her use me. I wasn't going to keep being her doormat. After making the call, I sat down with Liliana and we talked about it. She supported my decision 100%. She told me something I'll never forget. If she doesn't respect you enough to invite you to her wedding, then she doesn't deserve your money. And she was right. For years, I'd bent over backward for Layla, always trying to be the bigger person, always giving in. But enough was enough. The next day, things really started to unravel. The wedding planner called, frantic, saying they couldn't get into the venue to start setting up. Apparently, the venue staff had already begun dismantling everything. When Layla found out, I can only imagine her reaction. I wasn't there to see it, but a friend told me it was absolute chaos. Guests were confused, vendors were showing up not knowing where to set up, and no one had any idea what was going on. Layla tried calling me, of course, but I didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood for another screaming match, and frankly, I didn't owe her any more explanations. She made her choice, and now she had to deal with the consequences. I knew she'd be furious, but after everything she put me through, I didn't care. Let her figure it out. That same night, she actually showed up at my house. I wasn't too surprised. Layla isn't the type to let things go. But I wasn't willing to have another face-to-face confrontation with her. I needed space. So I'd already changed the door code so she couldn't get in. It's not like I was hiding or anything, but I wasn't going to let her come in and yell at me. I'd had enough of her words. She banged on the door for a while, yelling for me to come out. I just stayed inside, listening, not responding. There was nothing more to say. She'd made it clear where we stood, and this was my way of making it clear that I wasn't going to keep letting her take advantage of me. Eventually, she gave up and left, but I knew this wasn't over. Then I talked to my parents, and they weren't exactly thrilled with how I handled everything. They kept saying things like, "You can't be so hard on your own daughter. Parents shouldn't abandon their children, no matter what." I understood where they were coming from, but they didn't see everything I'd put up with for years. They didn't see the constant disrespect, the sense of entitlement she had, the way she treated Liliana and me. They thought I was being too harsh, but I wasn't going to change my mind. I wasn't going to let Layla's actions go unchecked. This whole thing left me with mixed feelings. On one hand, I knew I had done the right thing by standing up for myself. But on the other hand, she was my daughter. No matter how much she hurt me, I still felt this pang of guilt in the back of my mind. I kept thinking, did I go too far? Should I have just let her have her wedding and dealt with everything afterward? But then I'd remember the way she looked me in the eyes and told me she didn't want me there. That was the moment I knew I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for her. So, yeah, that's what happened. Layla's wedding plans were in shambles, and I was left wondering if there would ever be a chance for reconciliation. But at the end of the day, I had to protect myself. I had to protect my peace, even if it meant losing my daughter in the process. And honestly, I don't regret it. After the whole mess of canceling the wedding, I expected some kind of repercussion, but I didn't realize how quickly everything would fall apart. The day after I canceled the venue, the wedding planner called me, completely panicked. He started formally trying to explain the situation, but it was obvious he was losing it. The venue had already started shutting everything down, and the caterers and decorators couldn't get in. Apparently, when they arrived at the venue that morning, security showed them the email I sent with the cancellation, and that's when everything fell apart. He was calling to see if there was any way to salvage the situation, but I was done being polite. I told him straight up, I'm not paying for anything. Let the wedding go to hell. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist anymore. He stammered a bit, trying to reason with me, but I wasn't going to budge. I'd already made my decision, and I wasn't going to be pressured just because everyone else was losing their minds. He kept talking about how the vendors needed to be paid and how there was still time to fix things if I just covered the remaining costs. I cut him off and said, that's not my problem anymore. You're going to have to talk to Layla about that. And I hung up. Part of me felt bad for him. He was just doing his job. But this situation wasn't my mess to clean up anymore. Layla had made it clear she didn't want me involved, so I'm giving her exactly what she wanted. I wasn't going to keep being the one to fix everything. What happened after that, I didn't find out until much later. But apparently, when Layla arrived at the venue and discovered it was completely canceled, she lost it. I mean, a total meltdown. According to what I heard, she arrived expecting to see everything set up and ready to go, but instead, she found the place empty. No tables, no decorations, no catering, nothing. Just a locked door and a confused security guard telling her she couldn't come in. She tried calling me again, of course, but I'd already blocked her number. I wasn't willing to deal with another screaming match. I guess she thought I was bluffing or that I'd back down at the last minute. But when she realized I was serious, things really escalated. The security staff told her she couldn't come in, and that's when she exploded. According to what I was told, she started yelling at the security guards, demanding that they let her in. She even threatened to sue the venue, which honestly wasn't going to get her anywhere. At one point, she tried to force her way in, and that's when the guards called the police. If it hadn't been for Arthur, her fiancé, who arrived just in time, I'm sure they would have arrested her for trespassing. He managed to calm her down right before things went completely off the rails. But by then, the damage was done. Her perfect day was officially ruined. While all that chaos was happening at the venue, I was at home waiting for the inevitable knock on the door. I knew Layla wasn't the type of person to let something like this go. And sure enough, she showed up later that night. She was banging on the door, yelling for me to come out, but I stayed inside. I'd already decided there was no point in having another confrontation. We'd already said everything there was to say. I could hear her screaming, saying that I'd ruined everything, that I was being selfish. Part of me wanted to go out there and try to talk to her, explain why I did what I did. But another part of me knew it wouldn't change anything. Layla had already made up her mind about me a long time ago, and nothing I said was going to change that. So I stayed inside, letting her vent until she eventually gave up and left. After she left, I sat down with Liliana and we talked about what happened. Liliana, as always, was supportive. She kept telling me I did the right thing, that it was about time I stood up for myself. But I couldn't help feeling conflicted. On the one hand, I knew I had to draw a line. Layla's behavior had been spiraling out of control for years, and this was the final straw. But on the other hand, I couldn't shake the guilt knowing that I was the one who ruined my own daughter's wedding. As the days went by, news started to spread through the family about what had happened. I still hadn't said anything to anyone, but apparently Layla went and told her version of the story to anyone who would listen. Soon, I started getting calls from relatives asking me why I did it, why I couldn't just let her have her day. My parents, especially, were disappointed. They didn't agree with how Layla had treated me, but they still thought I should have let the wedding go ahead and dealt with the consequences later. I tried to explain to them that it wasn't just about the wedding, that it was years of built-up resentment and disrespect. I couldn't keep being the one to fix everything, especially when she didn't even want me there in the first place. I told them they didn't understand. To them, it was just another case of a father-daughter squabble, something that could be patched up with time. But to me, it felt like something much bigger. It wasn't just a temporary falling out. It felt like a breaking point in our relationship, and I didn't know if there was any coming back from it. The rest of the week was quiet. Layla didn't try to contact me again, and I didn't try to reach out to her either. I was trying to give myself some space to process it all. But no matter what I did, the guilt kept lingering. I kept thinking, was I too harsh? Should I have just sucked it up and let the wedding happen? I talked to Liliana again, and she reminded me of all the times Layla had walked all over me, all the times I'd given in just to keep the peace. She was right. I spent so many years bending over backward to make Layla happy, and where did it get me? Shut out of her wedding, blocked from one of the most important moments of her life. At some point, enough is enough. I remember the way she looked at me in that last confrontation, so cold and dismissive, and I knew there was no reasoning with her. This wasn't just a little argument. It was the result of years of pent-up anger and resentment. And it was clear she wasn't going to budge. So yeah, that's how it all ended with the wedding. It wasn't pretty, and it definitely wasn't easy. But at the end of the day, I had to stand my ground. And even though I still felt guilty, I knew I couldn't keep letting myself be walked all over. The consequences were chaotic, but necessary. A few months later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Arthur, Layla's husband. I instantly got nervous, thinking maybe something had happened to her. He told me she was fine, but he wanted to see me in person. I was surprised. I asked him why, but he said he'd tell me when we met. He said he was in town, and if I had time, we could have dinner together. I agreed, secretly hoping that it was a meeting to reconcile Layla and me. I thought she wanted to see me but was too ashamed to face me, so Arthur was acting as a go-between. I went with high hopes. After all, I'm her father. To my disappointment, Arthur was alone. I asked about Layla, and he said he didn't know. My heart sank, and I asked if something had happened to her, if she was all right. He told me that they were separated. Then he revealed that Layla had been abusive in the marriage, that she had serious anger issues, that she threw things and broke objects in the house, even in minor arguments. Arthur took it all as much as he could, but when the situation became unbearable, he separated from her. He told me Layla has a psychological problem and always blames others for any inconvenience happening to her. She constantly picked fights with him because they had to move to a different city when better job opportunities came up for Arthur. Layla lost nothing with that move. She landed a job with a similar salary in that same city. Still, she was furious for leaving their hometown, and that was just one thing. Layla was always upset with Arthur and constantly picked fights with him. He said there was another reason he wanted to see me in person. He wanted to apologize. He told me he had witnessed Layla's cruelty toward me, Liliana, even my parents, but he did not intervene because Layla had manipulated him against us. He said he had brought misery upon himself by ignoring all the warning signs. I replied that it wasn't his fault, that it was Layla's fault, and maybe partly mine, too, for not knowing how to raise her better. I also apologized to him for everything that happened while he was with her. Arthur asked me for one last favor. He said Layla was devastated by the separation, begging him to come back to her, but he had stopped loving her due to all the abuse he suffered. He wished her well. He asked me if I could reach out to her and support her during these hard times. She literally has no friends because she lost all of them thanks to her temper. He said she doesn't have any real or permanent friends in her life. He asked me to take her to therapy or something. I told him I'd love to, but that she wouldn't let me near her. He understood my circumstances, and I understood his. We both wanted to help Layla if she would let us. After knowing all this, I couldn't help myself from going to see Layla. And it went just as I expected. She launched into attacks on me and Liliana, although I went alone. I didn't want Liliana to witness Layla's fury. I apologized to her to try to calm her down. At that point, I didn't think about what was right or wrong. She was going through a really tough time, and I wanted to help her. I told her she could curse at me all she wanted, but that first she needed to see a therapist. She didn't listen and started bringing up all the past. She screamed that she hated Liliana so much that she wanted to kill her. She said she blocked us from her wedding because she was ashamed to introduce Liliana as her stepmother. She was ashamed of Liliana and ashamed that I married her. She didn't listen to me and kicked me out of the house. She blamed me for all the miseries in her life. I got up and said, I tried, but now I won't try again. There's a limit to patience, and I just crossed it. Have a good day, Layla. Then I walked out. Slowly, deliberately, without looking back. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I simply left because there was nothing more to say. She'd made her feelings clear. I had made mine clear, too. It's been 2 years since that day. In that time, I've rebuilt parts of myself I didn't even know were broken. I stopped explaining. I stopped justifying. And most of all, I stopped hoping. Anytime someone tries to mention her, whether it's a question, a rumor, a casual comment, I immediately stop it. I say, I'd rather not talk about that, and I leave it at that. I don't owe anyone any explanations anymore. I've made peace with my decision. I sleep better. I breathe easier. Liliana and I are still together. Then, a few days ago, my mother called. Her voice was soft, cautious, like she wasn't sure how to begin. Gavin, she said, I thought you should know, Layla is in a mental health facility. I didn't respond. I just listened. She isn't doing well, my mother added, her voice wavering. They say she's struggling emotionally and mentally. Still, I said nothing. Finally, she asked, do you think you'll go see her? I paused, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to make sure she heard me clearly the first time. No, I said. I'm done. There was silence on the other end of the line, but I didn't fill it. I've spent too much of my life filling silences that weren't mine to fill. I don't say this with anger. I say it with acceptance. I tried. Over and over I tried. But trying became surviving, and surviving became surrendering.